Hey everyone, it's Holly. It's about time I put up another student hat video. I just finished the KSW series, and I wanted to start something else, but I feel like before I can do any of that, I need to finish this. And we're only 67 pages in, so there's probably going to be a lot of student hat videos coming in the future. So, let's get started so we can end up getting it over with. This is the HCO policy letter of the 26th of August, 1965. This is Scientology training twin checkouts. In Scientology training, we use a system called twin checkouts. Each student is assigned a twin to work with. The student studies his assigned material and is sometimes coached over the rough spots by his twin. When the student knows the material, he's then given a checkout by his twin. If he flunks, he returns to study and when ready, gets a new checkout. When he passes, the twin signs the assignment sheet, certifying that he's grasped it. The assignment sheet is turned in to the course supervisor at the end of the period. Bad study habits. Earlier forms of education suffer because of a habit. The habit is all one's years of formal schooling where this mistake is the whole way of life. If the student knows the words, the teacher assumes he knows the tune. It will never do a student any good at all to know some facts. The student is expected only to use facts. It's so easy to confront thought and so hard to confront action that the teacher often complacently lets the student mouth words and ideas that mean nothing to the student. All theory checkouts must consult the student's understanding. If they don't, they're useless and will upset the student eventually. Course difficulties stem entirely from the student's non-comprehension of words and data. While this can be cured by auditing, why audit it all the time when you can prevent it in the first place by adequate theory checkout? There are two phenomena here. The first phenomena, when a student misses understanding a word, the section right after that word is a blank in his memory. You can always trace back to the word just before the blank, get it understood, and find miraculously that the former blank area is not now blank in the text. The above is pure magic. So is he saying, you can always trace back to the word just before the blank. Section right after that word is a blank in his memory. Not necessarily. I can read something, not understand a word, move on to the next section, and still remember the next section. The former blank area is not now blank in the text. Are you saying that he's perceiving the text as blank on the fucking page? Like, I don't know what Hubbard means by that and how the hell that could be accurate. Second phenomena. The second phenomena occurs after the student has gone by many misunderstood words. He begins to dislike the subject being studied more and more. This is followed by various mental and physical conditions and by various complaints, fault-finding, and look what you did to me. This justifies a departure, a blow, from the subject being studied. But the system of education, frowning on blows as it does, causes the student to really withdraw self from the study subject, whatever he was studying, and set up, in its place, a circuit which can receive and give back sentences and phrases. We now have, quote, the quick student who somehow never applies what he learns, unquote. The specific phenomena, then, is that a student can study some words and give them back, and yet be no participant to the action. The student gets A+ on exams, but can't apply the data. Kind of tough to apply the data when you're studying something like history, or just reading English literature. Demonstration is the key here. The moment you ask this type of student to demonstrate a rule or theory with his hands, or the paper clips on your desk, this glibness will shatter. The reason for this is that in memorizing words or ideas, the student can still hold the position that it has nothing to do with him or her. It's a total circuit action. Therefore, very glib. The moment you say demonstrate that word or idea or principle, the student has to have something to do with it, and shatters. The thoroughly dull student is just stuck in the non-comprehend blankness following some misunderstood word. The very bright student, who yet can't use the data, isn't there at all. He has long since ceased to confront the subject matter or the subject. The cure for either of these conditions of bright non-comprehension or dull is to find the missing word. But these conditions can be prevented by not letting the student go beyond the missed word without grasping its meaning. And that is the duty of the twin. Coaching in theory. Coaching theory means getting a student to define all the words, give all the rules, demonstrate things in the text with his hands or bits of things, and also may include doing definitions of Scientology terms. The usual course supervisor action would be to have any student who's having any trouble or is slow or glib team up with a twin of comparable difficulties and have them turn about with each other with theory coaching. Then when they have a text assignment coached, they give their twin a checkout. The checkout is a spot checkout, a few definitions of rules and some demonstration of them. Demonstration. Giving a text assignment check by seeing if it can be quoted or paraphrased proves exactly nothing. This will not guarantee that the student knows the data or can use or apply it, nor even guarantees that the student is there. Not the bright student nor the dull student, both suffering from the same malady, will benefit from such an examination. So examining by seeing if somebody knows the text and can quote or paraphrase it is completely false and must not be done. Correct examination is done only by making the person being tested answer A, the meanings of the words, redefining the words used in his own words and demonstrating their use in his own made-up sentences, and B, demonstrating how the data is used. The twin can ask what the words mean, and the twin can ask for examples of action or application. What is the first paragraph is about as dull as one can get. What are the rules given about blank? A question I would never bother to ask. Neither of these tell the twin whether he has the bright non-applier or the dull student before him. Such questions just beg for natter and coarse blows. I would go over the first paragraph of any material I was examining a student on and pick out some uncommon words. I'd ask the student to define each and demonstrate its use in a made-up sentence and flunk the first, let me see. And that would be the end of that checkout. I wouldn't pick out only Scientologies. I'd pick out words that weren't too ordinary, such as benefit, permissive, calculated, as well as engram. Students I was personally examining would begin to get a hunted look and carry dictionaries, but they wouldn't begin to natter or get sick or blow, and they'd use what they learned. Above all, I myself would be sure I knew what the words meant before I started to examine. Dealing with new technology and the necessity to have things named, we especially need to be alert. Before you curse our terms, remember that a lack of terms to describe phenomena can be twice as incomprehensible as having involved terms that at least can be understood eventually. We do awfully well, really better than any other science or subject. We lack a dictionary, but we can remedy that. But to continue with how one should examine, when the student had the words, I demand the music. What tune do these words play? I'd say, alright, what use is this text assignment to you? Questions like, now this rule here about not letting PCs eat candy while being audited, how come there'd be such a rule? And if the student couldn't imagine why, I'd just go back to the words ahead of that rule and find the one that he hadn't grasped. I'd ask, what are the 3 parts of the ARC triangle? And when the student gave them, I'd still have the task of satisfying myself that the student understood why those were the 3 parts. I'd ask, how come, after he'd given them to me? Or what are you going to do with these? But if the student wasn't up to the point of study where knowing why he used the ARC triangle was not part of his materials, I wouldn't ask. For all the data about not examining above level applies very severely to theory checkout as well as to practical and general instruction. I might also have a stack of paper clips and rubber bands and use them to have students show me they knew the words and ideas. Theory often says, well, they take care of all that in practical. Oh no, they don't. When you have a theory section that believes that, practical can't function at all. Practical goes through the simple motions. Theory covers why one goes through the motions. I don't think I have to beat this to death for you. You've got it. Dictionaries. Dictionaries should be available to students in theory and should be used in twin checkouts as well, preferably the same publication. Dictionaries don't always agree with each other. No twin should try to define English language words out of his own head when correcting a student, as it leads to too many arguments. On English words, open a dictionary. A Scientology dictionary will be available in a few months from the date of this bulletin, as one is being rushed into publication. Did I miss anything here? Because I feel like I might have. No, we did finish this. Okay. Alright. So we covered the 2 phenomena about bad study habits. So you got the section of the passage or material after the misunderstood word being blank in the student's mind, and you've got the feeling of being angry at the subject, not liking it, complaining, fault-finding, and leaving. So there's coaching in theory and demos, as well as a short passage on dictionaries. All right. Policy letter of the 4th of March, 1971. We got how to do theory checkouts and examinations. The important points of a bulletin, tape, or policy letter are the specific rules, axioms, maxims, or stable data, the doingness details, exactly how it's done, and the theory of why it is done. All else is unnecessary. All you have to demand is the above. 1. The rules, axioms, maxims, or stable data must be known, and the student must be able to show their meaning is also known to him or her. 2. The doingness must be exactly known as to sequence and actions, but not verbatim, in the same words as the text. 3. The theory must be known as a line of reasoning, reasons why, or related data, and with accuracy, but not verbatim. The date of the lecture or bulletin or letter is relatively unimportant, and other details of like nature should never be asked for. If a student or staff member is ever going to apply the data, then above must be down cold, 2 must be able to be experienced, and 3 must be appreciated. Asking for anything else is to rebuff interest and give a feeling of failure to the person being examined. An examiner or twin should examine with exactness on one, so exactness on the rules, axioms, maxims, or stable data, alertness on the doingness details of how it is done, and seeing if the student understands the theory of why it's done. An examiner or twin should not go beyond these points, asking for what person was mentioned, who did the test, what's the copyright date, what are the first words, etc. Graduation from courses must be speeded up, and at the same time, the data, the important data, must be known and understood. Good, sound examination is the answer here. Irrelevant examination questions only slow the student and extend the course. It might also be noted that checkouts on bulletins must also ask for demonstrations. Use paper clips, rubber bands, etc. The examiner or twin should ask questions that require an ability to apply. Give the student a situation and have him tell you how he would handle it. Be as tough as you please, but only on 1, 2, and 3 above. This is a very short policy letter, so let's jump right into the next one. Policy letter of 24th of September 1964, Instruction and Examination, Raising the Standard of. The basic reason students remain long on courses stems from inept criticism by instructors regarding what is required. There's a technology of criticism of art expressed beautifully in the encyclopedia published by Focal Press. In this article, it stresses that a critic who's also an expert artist tends to introduce unfairly his own perfectionism and bias and frustrations into his criticism. We suffer amazingly from this in all our courses. I had not previously spotted it because I don't demand a student at lower levels produce results found only in higher levels. You can carelessly sum this up by letting the student have wins, but if you do, you'll miss the whole point. Example: a student up for pass on his ITSA is flunked because he or she couldn't acknowledge, but a student at the ITSA level hasn't been taught to acknowledge. This student hasn't even read the data on acknowledgement. So the student can't pass ITSA level and so never does get to the level where acknowledgement is taught. And if he does, really never passed in his own mind, ITSA and so hasn't advanced. And we catch all our students this way and they don't therefore learn. How is this done and how could this be? The instructor is an expert auditor. That's as it should be. But as an expert auditor, bad execution of a level above where the student is studying pains the instructor. So he flunks the student because the auditing looks bad. But look here, the student wasn't being checked out as an auditor. The student was only being checked out on ITSA. Further, the action of auditing as a whole is so easy to an instructor who is an expert auditor that he fails to take it apart for instruction. If I say the following, it will look ridiculous and you'll get the point better. The student is up to pass TR0. The instructor on checkout looks the student over and says, "You flunked the test." The student says, "Why?" The instructor says, "You didn't take the class 6 actions to clear the PC of all his GPMs." Alright, we can all see that would be silly, but instructors do just that daily, though on a narrower band. The instructor puts in additives. As an expert auditor, it seems natural to him to say, "You flunked your test on ITSA because you never acknowledged the PC." You get the point. This really is as crazy wide as the ridiculous example above. What does AC have to do with ITSA? Nothing. Because the instructor is an expert auditor, auditing has ceased to have parts and is all one chunk. Okay. A good auditor regards it that way, but the poor student can't grasp any of the pieces because the whole chunk is being demanded. What's ITSA? It's listen. Can the student listen? Okay, he can listen, but the expert says he didn't get 15 divisions of TA per hour. On the what? On the meter, of course. What meter? That's level 2 and ITSA's level 0. Yes, the expert protests, but the PC didn't get any better. Okay, so what PC is supposed to get better at level 0? If they do, it's an accident, usually. Now, does this student pass? No, he can't even look at the PC. Well, that's TR0 of level 1, but he's got to look like an auditor. How can he? An auditor has to get through a comm course before you can really call him that. Okay, I'll drop my standards, the expert begins. Hell no, expert. You better pick up your standards for each level and for each small part of auditing. What's it say at level 0? It says listen. Okay, then damn it, when the student is able to sit and listen and not shut a PC down with yak, the student passes. And the meter? You better not let me catch you teaching meters at level 0. And so it goes right on up through the levels and the bits within the levels. By making ITSA mysterious and tough, by adding big new standards to it like TA and AC, you only succeed in never teaching the student ITSA. So he goes on up and at level 4 audits like a bum, can't control a PC, can't meter, nothing. So the expert tries to make a student do class 6 auditing the first day and the student is never trained to do any auditing at level 0. This nonsense repeated at level 1 by adding a meter, by purist flunking because the PC couldn't handle an ARC break, and repeated again at level 2 because the PC couldn't assess, and at level 3, etc., etc. Well, if you add things all the time out of sequence and demand things the student has not yet reached, the student winds up in a ball of confusion like the cat getting into the yarn. So we're not instructing, we're preventing a clear view of the parts of auditing by adding higher level standards and actions to lower level activities. This consumes time, it makes a mess. The new HCA always tries to teach his group a whole HCA course his first evening home. Well, that's no reason seasoned veterans have to do it on our courses. If you never let a student learn level 0 because he's flunked, unless he does level 6 first, people will stay on courses forever and we'll have no auditors. Instructors must teach not out of their own expertise, but out of the textbook expected actions in the level the student is being trained in. To go above that level, like assessment in level 2 or AC and meters at level 0, is to deny the student any clean view of what he's expected to do, and if he never learns the parts, he'll never do the whole. And that's all that's wrong with our instruction or our instructors. As expert auditors, they cease to view the part the student must know as itself and do not train and pass the student upon it. Instead, they confuse the student by demanding more than the part being learned. Instruction is done on a gradient scale. Learn each part well by itself, and only then can assembly of parts occur into what we want, a well-trained student. This is not lowering any standards, it's raising them on all training. Bulletin checkouts. The other side of the picture, theory, suffers because of a habit. The habit is all one's years of formal schooling where this mistake is the whole way of life. If the student knows the words, the theory instructor assumes he knows the tune. It'll never do a student any good at all to know some facts. The student's expected only to use facts. It's so easy to confront thought and so hard to confront action that the instructor often complacently lets the student mouth words, ideas that mean nothing to the student. Wait, we already read this part. All theory checkouts must consult the student's understanding. If they don't, they're useless and will ARC break the student eventually. Course natter stems entirely from the student's non-comprehension of words and data. While this can be cured by auditing, why audit it all the time when you can prevent it in the first place by adequate theory checkout? There are two phenomena here. We've already covered the first and second phenomena. Why is it doing this again? I think this is actually different. Okay, yeah, so this is worded a bit differently. First phenomena. When a student misses understanding a word, the section right after that word is blank in his memory. You always trace back to the word just before the blank, get it understood, and find miraculously that the former blank area is now not blank in the bulletin. The above is pure magic. Second phenomena. The second phenomena is the overt cycle which follows a misunderstood word. When a word is not grasped, the student then goes into a non-comprehension or blankness of things immediately after. This is followed by the student's solution for the blank condition, which is to individuate from it, separate self from it. Now, being something else than the blank area, the student commits overts against the more general area. These overts, of course, are followed by restraining himself from committing overts. This pulls flows toward the person and makes the person crave motivators. This is followed by various mental and physical conditions and by various complaints, fault-finding, and look what you did to me. This justifies a departure or a blow. Yep, we went through the system of education, blah, 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 blah. We now have the quick student. Yep, A+ on exams. Yep, thoroughly dull, very bright. But these conditions can be prevented by not letting the student go beyond the missed word without grasping its meaning. And that is the duty of the theory instructor. So why did they repeat this? Demonstration. Giving a bulletin or tape check by seeing if it could be quoted or paraphrased proves exactly nothing. This will not guarantee that the student knows the data or can use or apply it, nor even guarantees that the student is there. Neither the bright student nor the dull student, both suffering from the same malady, will benefit from such an examination. So examining by seeing if somebody knows the text and can quote or paraphrase it is completely false and must not be done. Correct examination is only done by making the person being tested answer the following two questions, which we covered. The examiner need not do a clay table audit just to get a student to pass, but the examiner can ask what the words mean. The examiner can ask for examples or actions of the application. What is this HCO Bulletin's first section is about as dull as one can get. What are the rules given about blank is a question I would never bother to ask. Neither of these tell the examiner whether he has the bright non-applier or the dull student before him. Yep, we got that. Yep. Above all, I myself would be sure I knew what the words meant before I started to examine. Dealing with new technology and the necessity to have things named, we especially need to be alert. Before you curse our terms, remember that a lack of terms to describe phenomena can be twice as incomprehensible as having involved terms that at least can be understood eventually. We do awfully well, really, yep, we lack a dictionary, but we can remedy that. But to continue with how one should examine when the student had the words, I'd demand the music, yep. I'd say, all right, what use is this bulletin or tape to you? Questions like, now this rule, yep, eating candy. What the fuck why is everything being repeated? I'd ask, what are the commands of 8C? And when the student gave them, I'd still have the task of satisfying myself that the student understood why those were the commands. I'd ask, how come? And he'd give me the commands. I'd ask how come after he'd given me the commands. Or what are you going to do with these? Audit a PC with them, he might say. I'd say, well, why these commands? But if the student wasn't up to the point of study where knowing why he used those commands was not part of his material, I wouldn't ask. For all the data about not examining above level applies very severely to theory checkout, as well as to practical and general instruction. I might also have a clay table beside my examiner's desk, and certainly would have if I were an HCO hat checker, to which all this data also applies, and use it to have students show me they knew the words and ideas. Theory often says, well, they take care of all that in practical. Oh, no, they don't. When you have a theory section that believes that, practical can't function at all. Practical goes through the simple motions. Theory covers why one goes through the motions. I don't think I have to beat this to death for you. You've got it. It seems like you've beaten it to death by repeating some of that shit. Theory checkout data from the policy letter of the 4th of October 1964, reissued on the 21st of May 1967. In checking out technical materials on students or staff, it's been found that the new system as per HCO policy letter of September 24th, 64 is too lengthy if the whole bulletin's covered. Therefore, the system given in September 24th, 64 policy letter is to be used as follows. 1. Do not use the old method of covering each bit combined with the new method. 2. Use only the new method. 3. Spot check the words and materials. Do not try to cover it all. This is done the same way a final examination is done in schools. Only part of the material is covered by examination, assuming that if the student has this right, the student knows all of it. 4. Flunk on comm lag in attempts to answer. If the student, flunk it, as it certainly isn't known well enough to use. Doesn't include stammerers. Never keep on examining a bulletin after a student has missed. Consider all materials star rated or not rated. Skip 75%. In other words, the checkout must have been 100% right answers for a pass. 75% is not a pass. When you consider a bulletin or tape too unimportant for a 100% pass, just require evidence that it's been read and don't examine it at all. In other words, on those you check out, require 100%, and on less important material, don't examine, merely require evidence of having read. The bright ones. You will find that often you have very glib students you won't be able to find any fault in, who yet won't be able to apply or use the data they're passing. The student is discussed as the bright student in the September 24th of 64 policy letter. Demonstration is the key here. Yet the glibness will shatter. Again, he's repeating the same crap. Yep, it's a theory. Blah, 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 blah. Passing ITSA. One student passed ITSA in theory with flying colors every time, even on cross-check type questions, yet had never been known to listen. When the theory instructor said demonstrate what a student would have to do to pass ITSA, the whole subject blew up. There's too many ways to do ITSA auditing, the student said. Yet on the bulletin it merely said listen. That given as a glib answer was all right, but demonstration brought to light that the student hadn't a clue about listening to a PC. If he had to demonstrate it, the non-participation of the student in the material he was studying came to light. Don't get the idea that demonstration is a practical section action. Practical gives the drills, and these demonstrations in theory aren't drills. Clay table isn't used to any extent by a theory examiner. Hands, a diagram, paper clips, these are usually quite enough. Coaching in theory. There is theory coaching as well as practical coaching. Coaching theory means getting a student to define all the words, give all the rules, demonstrate things in the bulletin with his hands or bits of things, and also may include doing clay table definitions of Scientology terms. That's all theory coaching. It compares to coaching on drills and practical. But it's done on bulletins, tapes, and policy letters which are to be examined in the future. Coaching is not examining. The examiner who coaches instead of examining will stall the progress of the whole class. The usual supervisor action would be to have any student who's having any trouble or is slow or glib team up with another student of comparable difficulties and have them turn about with each other with theory coaching similar to practical coaching and drills. Then when they have a bulletin, tape, or policy letter coached, they have a checkout. The checkout is a spot checkout as above, a few definitions or rules, and some demonstration of them. Dictionaries. Dictionaries should be available to students in theory and should be used in theory examination as well, preferably the same publication. Dictionaries don't always agree with each other. No supervisor should try to define English language words out of his own head when correcting a student, as it leads to too many arguments. On English words, open a dictionary. A Scientology dictionary is available. Remember that with courses becoming briefer in duration, the number of bulletins and tapes which the student must know on a star-rated basis is also less. General written examination for classification, however, remains on an 85% pass basis. Be sure that students who get low marks constantly are also handled in review, preferably by definitions of words they haven't understood in some former subject. Scientology is never the cause of consistent dullness or glibness. I'm sure that's wrong. Processing of this nature can be on an ITSA basis. It does not have to be clay table. Just finding the prior subject by discussion and discussing its words usually blows the condition. I've seen it change the whole attitude of a person in just 5 or 10 minutes of auditing on a locate the subject and word basis. Therefore, definitions exist at level 0 and 1, but not with clay table or assessment, only by ITSA. You'd be surprised how well it works and how fast. Subjects you didn't like, words you haven't grasped, are the discussion question. The subject of wrong definitions cause stupidity or circuits, followed by overts and motivators, is not easy to get across because it's so general amongst mankind. There's a possibility that past lives themselves are wiped out by changing language, whether it's the same language that changes through the years or shifting nationality. But however that may be, don't be discouraged at the difficulties you may have in getting this principle understood and used in Scientology departments. The person you're trying to convince has definitions out somewhere also. Alright, please don't tell me they're going to repeat any more of this crap in the next one. This cancels and replaces the board policy letter of the 3rd of March 1971 called Starrate Outpoints. This is Starrate Outpoints. The following is a list of the most frequent mistakes made on giving star rate checkouts. This list was originally compiled at my request and is now being reissued to give it the full force of an HCO policy letter. 1. Not flunking immediately on a comm lag, but getting reasonable and allowing the student to carry on with the checkout. This stems from not knowing the reason for flunks on comm lags. Not spot checking a student on the policy or bulletin. This stems from not knowing the purpose of spot checking or why it's okay to spot check a student. 3. Not knowing that coaching in theory means getting the student to define all the words and give all the rules. This misunderstanding comes from not knowing the purpose of coaching in theory. 4. Not asking the student to use the word in a sentence after asking him to define the word in his own words. You ask for the meaning of the word and the use of the word in a made-up sentence. 5. Not knowing that a dull student is stuck in the blank space right after the misunderstood, and that a dull student is handled the same way you would handle a glib student. 6. Not asking questions that demand an ability to apply the data, assuming that if you ask a student to demonstrate, you've asked him to apply the data. This is the most important point in giving a checkout and is the purpose of giving a checkout. It must never be neglected in giving a checkout. 7. Not sending a student back to study when he flunks the policy or bulletin, but instead showing it to him and then carry on with the checkout. Also doing this when a student flunks on a word and just having him look the word up and carrying on with the checkout without having him look up the word and restudy the materials. This stems from not knowing what happens when a student goes past a misunderstood word. So it's wrong to just correct the word and move on with the checkout. So you have to go back and restudy everything just because you forgot one word. And this is why it can take a long time on a Scientology course. Note, sending a student back to study means the student gets his MUs found and cleared and restudies the material from the earliest misunderstood word found or from the beginning. It means full application of study tech. Students who haven't fully grasped the star rate checkout procedures have missed out on one or more of the above points. These points are all covered in the policies referenced at the beginning of this issue, and these policies must be known and applied by supervisors and students alike. It's only when lax, non-standard checkouts, or none at all, are given that results suffer. Tough standard checkouts are the way to keep Scientology working. So that was all about star rate checkouts and problems with star rate checkouts that people, I guess, have been doing. Giving star rate checkouts. How long is this one? We'll get it. Giving star rate checkouts from the HCO policy letter of the 31st of August, 1981. This cancels the board policy letter of the 21st of February 71, supervisor checkouts, and the board policy letter of the 14th of March 71 on giving checkouts. The only requirements for someone to give a star rate checkout are 1. He has done the star rate checkout section of the student hat or basic study manual, and 2. He has studied the materials on which he's giving the checkout. It's optimum if the person giving the checkout has been star rated on the materials, but this is not mandatory. Star rate checkouts are done by students on each other. They are not done by the course supervisor. The only star rate checkouts on students done by a supervisor are those done on the policy letters to do with procedure and technology of checkouts. This is done initially and as may be required at any later time to ensure that his students know how to give standard checkouts exactly by the book. The supervisor observes his students giving each other checkouts. He sees to the quality of these checkouts. If the checkouts are excellent, he lets the students get on with it. If correction is required, he hands out a pink sheet to the student to word clear and restudy the appropriate checkout policy letters, and then he checks the student out on these policy letters and the procedure himself. The checkout materials are the only ones he checks the student out on personally. The remedy for improper checkouts is word clearing and further study of checkout materials, not the supervisor taking over checkouts of all course materials himself. Only in this way can you have effective checkouts and a supervisor who's free to supervise effectively. These are starting to get boring. But I'm glad to see that we're in a technical bulletin and not a policy letter this time. So let's keep it up. We got the HCO Bulletin of the 4th of September, 1971. Simple words. You might suppose at once that it's the big words or the technical words which are most misunderstood. This is not the case. On actual test, it was English simple words and not Dianetics and Scientology words which prevented understanding. For some reason, Dianetics and Scientology words are more easily grasped than simple English. Words like a, the, exist, such, and other everybody knows words show up with great frequency when doing a method 2 word clearing. They read. Okay. Just because you don't know the definition of a, the, such, or and, doesn't mean you know how to apply. Doesn't mean you don't know how to apply it. Like, you get the idea of what and does and you know how to use it properly, but for some reason they're going to have you you're going to have you clear this shit, which is just stupid and I feel like is a complete waste of time. You don't need to understand the definition of a conjunction if you know how that conjunction works. It takes a big dictionary to define these simple words fully. This is another oddity. The small dictionaries also suppose everybody knows. It is almost incredible to see that a university graduate has gone through years and years of study of complex subjects and yet does not know what or by, or an means. It has to be seen to be believed, yet when cleaned up, his whole education turns from a solid mass of question marks to a clean, useful view. A test of school children in Johannesburg once showed that intelligence decreased with each new year of school. I'd like to know what this test was, and I guarantee you they're never going to tell you. Unless this is the Education Alive program that's on the website for it. Because there was a study about doing word clearing on students in South Africa, but they ended up word clearing without using any dictionaries. So they couldn't even do it right. The answer to the puzzle was simply that each year they added a few dozen more crushing misunderstood words onto an already confused vocabulary that no one ever got them to look up. Stupidity is the effect of MUs. In those areas which give man the most trouble, you will find the most alteration of fact, the most confused and conflicting ideas, and of course the greatest number of MUs. Take economics, for example. The study of psychology began its text by saying they did not know what the word means, so the subject itself never arrived. Professor Wundt of Leipzig University in 1879 perverted the term. It really just means a study of the soul. No. But I'm assuming it's actually Wundt. Working under the eye of Bismarck, the greatest of German military fascists, at the height of German war ambitions, had to deny man a soul. So there went the whole subject. Men went thereafter animals. It's all right to kill animals. And man had no soul, so the word psychology could no longer be defined. Are you saying that psychology is the study of the soul? You fucking idiot. It's the psyche. The psyche is not the soul. The psyche has to do with the mind. Hubbard just got that flat wrong. The earliest misunderstood word in a subject is a key to later misunderstood words in that subject. HCOB, remimio, I don't know how the fuck to pronounce that. Orgs which receive this must mimeograph it again and distribute it. Staff, TRs, training drill, issue 1, first issue of that date, are the commonest misunderstoods because they occur at the beginning of an HCOB. Oh my god. People aren't going to have a problem with those words because those words aren't the key to the fucking content of the bulletin or the policy letter. Just because it says issue 1 and you may not know what issue 1 means doesn't matter because the word issue 1 has nothing to do with the content on the page. Then come words like a, the, and other simple English as the next words that often read. In studying a foreign language, it's often found that the grammar words of one's own language that tell about the grammar in the foreign language are basic to not being able to learn the foreign language. The test of whether the person understands a word is, does it read on the meter as a fall when he reads the word and the material being cleared? So basically, you don't matter. Whether you think you understand it or not doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the meter says. And I mentioned this before in one of my previous videos. That a person says he knows the meaning is not acceptable. Have him look it up no matter how simple the word is. That's a huge waste of time. Alright, grammar. The HCO Bulletin of the 9th of June, 1972. In all word clearing, all grammatical words and small words should be looked up in a simple grammar textbook. Very few dictionaries have full definitions for such words, and they have no examples. Words like a, the, and are really parts of language construction and are more complex than they at first appear. A word-clearing auditor should have a simple grammar book to hand as well as dictionaries. The best grammar textbooks are those compiled for persons foreign to a language, like immigrants. These do not contain the supposition that the student is already an English professor. Lots of examples is the real test of a good grammar. When doing the study tapes or student hat, lack of a simple grammar textbook can really throw the student off. Those simple words can be the huge rocks that stand on the highway to becoming a word clear. So a grammar is needed. If a student is very deficient or lacking in grammar, it's best to make him do a whole simple grammar text first before he begins to get into just words. The words won't hang together for him. It takes less time to do a short textbook in grammar than it does to struggle with grammar all the way through. Grammar can look like a ghastly subject until one really looks at it. Then it's easy. And I'm pretty sure that's the Key to Life course. I think that has to do with grammar. Scientology 0, Scientology 6? The fuck? Alright, we're gonna get this done. I don't know what this is exactly. The HCO Bulletin of the 10th of March, 1965. Words and misunderstood goofs. It's come to my attention that words a student misunderstands and looks up can yet remain troublesome, and that R6 materials are suffering from the same fate when meter activity lessens. It's this way. The student runs across a word he or she doesn't understand. He or she looks it up in a dictionary, finds a substitute word, and uses that. Of course, the first word is still misunderstood and remains a bother. An example. The line in text was the size was gargantuan. Student looks up gargantuan, finds like gargantua, huge. Student uses huge as a synonym and reads the text line, the size was huge. A short while later is found still incapable of understanding the paragraph below gargantuan in the text. Conclusion, the student makes, well, it doesn't work. That's bullshit. People use synonyms all the time for things. It makes it pretty easy to understand paragraphs afterwards. Especially if they don't have the previous word in them, so why does that matter? The principle is that one goes dull after passing over a word one does not understand and brightens up the moment he spots the word that wasn't grasped. In actual fact, the brightening up occurs whether one defines the word or not. But to put another word in the place of the existing word, whether in level 0 or level 6, is to mess it all up. Take the above example. Huge is not gargantuan. These are synonyms. The sentence is, the size was gargantuan. The sentence was not, the size is huge. You can't really substitute one word for another at level 0 or level 6 and get anything but an alteration. So something remains not understood at level 0 and the meter stops at level 6. It just isn't what was said or thought. The correct procedure is to look over, get defined well, and understand the word that was used. In this case, the word was gargantuan. Very well, what's that? It means like gargantua, according to the dictionary. Who or what was Gargantua? The dictionary says it was the name of a gigantic king in a book written by the author Rabelais? Rabelais? I don't know. Cheers, the student thinks. The sentence meant the size was a gigantic king. Oops, that's the same goof again, like huge, but we're nearer. So what do? So what to do? Use gargantuan in a few sentences you make up, and bingo, you suddenly understand the word that was used. Now you read it right. The size was gargantuan. And what does that mean? It means the size was gargantuan and nothing else. Get it? There's no hope for it, mate. You'll have to learn real English, not the 600-word basic English of the college kid, in which a few synonyms are substituted for all the big words. And as an aside, like they use on the stage, may I say that, golly, some people have to reach a long way to find goofs. The data in the HCOB was given to me by Mary Sue Hubbard and called to attention by Ian Tampion. He's completely wrong. So, he says that one goes dull after passing over a word, does not understand, and brightens up once the word is defined. So imagine you're a student and you're looking at a book and you just do this. You just do this. You're just reading and you just do this. Supervisor's going to come up to you, ask you to clear it up. And they expect that once you clear it up, you're going to be all smiles and cheerful as you continue reading your book. And it's so stupid. People have to fake their expressions so supervisors don't come up to them. Alright, how long is this one? What the fuck? Alright, let's do this, because this is weird. HCO Bulletin of the 31st of August, 1971, revised. This is confused ideas. Whenever a person has a confused idea of something or believes there is some conflict of ideas, it's always true that a misunderstood word exists at the bottom of that confusion. Example, I just don't understand this idea of opposing forces. I think it all ought to be rewritten, and so the Method 2 word clearer says, is there any word that you don't understand? Read. The student says, oh no, I understand all the words. It's, what word is this that's reading on the meter? Forces? Yeah, that reads and blows down. Let's look it up. Oh no, I know what it means. It's the idea that let's look it up. Well, alright. Let's see. D-E-F-F-O, forces. Here it is. That which changes the motion of a body on which it acts. The word clearer. Use it in a sentence several times. Student does. I've got it. Hell, I thought it meant police brutality. Couldn't figure out why two police forces would fight. The word clearer. Now, how do you feel about this idea of opposing forces? Oh, let's see. Why, that's clear enough, just like I'd never read it before. The meter is now a floating needle. I don't think that anyone is that stupid. So you've got the wrong definition in this case. Oh my god, they're using the stupidest examples. Every green body of students will argue and fuss about ideas or confusions in the directions or materials they're given to read. They will generate weird ideas and erroneous concepts of what the text says. They do wrong things and say the text said to. They ask strange ideas of their instructors. They clamor for clarifications. And at the bottom of all this is simply misunderstood words. There is not also misunderstood ideas. There's only the MU, which breeds, then huge, towering, wrong ideas. A misunderstood word breeds strange ideas. So here's an example, confused concepts or ideas of the material at the top, whereas down here, you had the misunderstood word which supposedly led to it, detectable only by the meter. That's why the meter is more important than the actual person. Superliteracy and the cleared word. Alright, let's do this one. This is the Bulletin of September 7th, 1974, adapted from the LRH Executive Directive 178 International of 30th of May, 1972. Super, superiority in size, quality, number, or degree. Literacy, the ability to read and write. Almost everyone these days is able to read and write. This was not true a century ago, but with modern stress on education, it's true today. But is this enough today? It's an instruction book world. The civilization in which we live is highly technical. Education today goes into the 20s. That's a third of one's life. No, it's not. How old do you think people get, Hubbard? And what happens when one leaves school? Can he do what he studied? Does he have all his education, or did it get left behind? Literacy is not enough. Today's schools and today's world require a new ability. The ability to look at a page without any strain and absorb what it says and then apply it right now without any stress at all. And is that possible? Am I talking about speed reading? No. That's just being able to read rapidly. It does not improve the comfort of reading, and it does not improve the ability to apply. What's really needed is the ability to comfortably and quickly take data from a page and be able at once to apply it. Anyone who could do that would be super literate. What happens? The average person literate is able to read words and mentally record words, like this. So he takes the words, and now he has the same words in his mind. When he writes the words that he saw earlier. In his mind, words are understood as other words like this. I don't get what you mean by that part. That's a little confusing. Not confusing, it just doesn't make sense. What do you mean, his mind, words are understood as other words? When one is super literate, here's what happens. You've got words, so you have the same words, and you've got concepts. Therefore, as he is dealing in concepts, ideas or understandings, this can happen. You've got concepts, and you've got action. And he thinks in concepts to which he can fit words easily and so can write clearly. In other words, when one is superliterate, one reads not words but understandings, and so one can act. Yeah, we got this last page. The idea of grasping word meanings conceptually is something new to the field of linguistics. The endless semantic circles pursued by Korzybski and company, see Data Series 1, The Anatomy of Thought, never really led to the realization that a word and its meanings are embodied in the basic concept or idea symbolized by that word. That conceptualization of meanings is foreign to dictionary writers and experts is evidenced by the fact that definitions are so subject to alter-is and change with the passage of time. For example, modern definitions of the word understand are found to be largely inadequate. A really full and meaningful definition of it could only be found in a first edition of Webster's Dictionary of Synonyms from 1942. Understand, to have a clear and true idea or conception or full and exact knowledge of something. In general, it may be said that understand refers to the result of a mental process or processes, a clear and exact idea or notion or full knowledge. Understand implies the power to receive and register a clear and true impression. Cleared words. Operating within a society steeped in MUs and misdefinitions, study tech is subject to arbitraries. Thus, a cleared word is defined as follows: a word which has been cleared to the point of full conceptual understanding. In metered word clearing, this translates as floating needle, very good indicators. There are many ways and combinations to achieve this end phenomena. Using the word in sentences until the meaning is grasped conceptually is the most common. Diagrams, demos, clay, in fact the entire body of study tech and its methods are applicable. These are vital tools for use. Protect them and KSW. Alright, we're going to keep doing this because I feel like I can get some of this done. HCO Bulletin of the 7th of February, 1972. This is Issue 2. Method 3, Word Clearing by the Student's Twin. In Scientology, each student's assigned a twin to study with. A twin must know how to keep a student floating needling, one who's tearing along successfully in his studies. The student's twin would handle anything that slowed or interfered with a student's floating needle. Students don't put each other on a meter to locate an MU. It's the supervisor who meters a student to find his MU as per the HCOBs using the floating needle student system. So we've got 4 HCOBs from the word clearing series about that. For a student and his twin, using dope off as the only detection of MUs is twinning at a below floating needle level. The FN went off long before the student reached the point of dope off, so waiting for dope off to occur before handling is waiting too long. As soon as the twin's study stats drop for half a day, or the twin isn't quite so bright as he was 15 minutes ago, is the time to look for the MU. It's not a misunderstood phrase or idea or concept, but a misunderstood word. This always occurs before the subject itself is not understood. This is Method 3 style word clearing by the student's twin. 1. The student notices his twin is not flying along and is not so bright, or it could be just plain lack of enthusiasm or too long on one item on the check sheet, or yawning, or disinterest, or doodling, or daydreaming, etc. 2. The student then has his twin look earlier in the text for a misunderstood word. There is one always, there are no exceptions. It may be that the MU is 2 pages or more back, but it's always earlier in the text from where the twin is now. 3. The word's found. The twin recognizes it in looking back for it, or the student asks, what does blank mean, if the twin can't find it, by taking words from the text that could be the misunderstood word, and seeing if the twin gives the correct definition. 4. The student has the twin look up the word found in a dictionary and use it verbally several times in sentences of his own composition until the twin has obviously demonstrated that he understands the word by the composition of his sentences. The student has the twin read the text that contain the misunderstood word. If the twin isn't now bright, eager to get on with it, backup tone, etc., then there's another misunderstood word earlier in the tone. This is found by repeating steps 2 to 5. 6. When the twin is bright, uptone, etc., a floating needle student, the student has the twin come forward from where the misunderstood word was in the text to the area of the subject he did not understand where step 1 began. The twin will now be enthusiastic with his study of the subject unless a misunderstood word was missed or there's an earlier one in the text. If so, do steps 2 to 5. If the twin is now enthusiastic, have him continue on with studying. Students do not have to be word cleared method 2 on the total of any course. Alright, so here we learn what causes someone to ask their twin for a misunderstood word. Could be lack of enthusiasm, or too long on an item on the check sheet, or God forbid you yawn. That means you have a misunderstood word, which is the stupidest idea I've ever heard. One of the stupidest ideas. Disinterest or doodling or daydreaming, etc. Doing what most people do in a classroom. The student then has his twin look earlier in the text for an MU. There's one always, there are no exceptions. That's a strong claim to say that that is the exact thing that's causing it. So you yawn, not because you're tired. No, you have a misunderstood word, so you gotta go clear it up. Again, people faking their expressions so that supervisors or twins don't tell them to go back and find their MU. Coaching. 2, 3. I'm not doing that one, but let's just see what we got after that. Method 9, word clearing. Alright. So, we will end off here at coaching. This is the 24th of May, 1968. I know that this was a little bit boring, a little repetitive, but thank you guys for sticking around. Like if you liked the video, dislike it if you didn't. I don't care, YouTube. Comment with any feedback or questions you have, good, bad, or sideways. Subscribe if you want to be kept up to date on any future content. I'll talk to all of you later. See ya.